A crystal champagne flute trembles in perfectly manicured fingers as a single drop of crimson blood falls from above, dissolving into golden bubbles. The terrace of a luxurious penthouse in Mumbai sparkles with 1,000 lights reflecting off the Arabian Sea. Tonight, under a blood-red moon rising over the city's glittering skyline, two American cousins stand on the edge of one of the world's most expensive balconies, toasting what they believe is happiness. 6 months from this moment, 3 people will be dead. One will be planning her next kill. But tonight, as the warm ocean breeze carries the scent of jasmine and wealth through the air, neither woman understands the tragedy that's about to unfold. The skyscrapers of Mumbai pierce the sky like golden needles, stitching together heaven and earth, while below them, the city's elite society glitters like scattered diamonds across the coastal landscape. Welcome to Crime Canvas, where we paint the complex picture of crimes that shake our understanding of justice, revenge, and human nature. If you're new here, please subscribe and join us as we explore one of the most disturbing cases of biological terrorism ever documented. This is a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and the lengths people will go for revenge. Her name was Rebecca Chin, though everyone called her Becca. At 28 years old, she had been trapped in what many would call paradise for 3 long years. Married to Farhan Desai, a real estate mogul 35 years her senior, Becca lived in a penthouse that overlooked the Mumbai coastline. The marble floors echoed with the hollow sound of designer heels clicking against emptiness. Her daily routine had become a carefully choreographed dance of luxury and loneliness. Morning yoga with a private instructor. Afternoon spa treatments that left her skin glowing but her soul untouched. Evening galas where she smiled on command while Farhan's weathered hand possessively gripped her waist, displaying her like a trophy to his business associates. 3 years of marriage had taught Becca a painful truth. She was an investment, not a partner. Her American passport, her youth, her ability to charm his colleagues at dinner parties. These were her only currencies in a relationship that felt more like an employment contract written in gold ink. Every morning, Becca would stand on the balcony overlooking Marine Drive, watching other people live their lives while she remained suspended in amber. The penthouse was a museum of wealth. Persian rugs worth more than houses. Crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow prisons across walls lined with art she wasn't allowed to touch. This is the reality many don't see behind the glamour of marriages built on financial transactions rather than emotional connection. According to relationship psychologists, marriages with significant age and power imbalances often leave the less powerful partner feeling isolated and objectified. Becca was living proof of this dynamic. Then everything changed when her cousin arrived. Lauren Mitchell landed at Mumbai's Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport on a Tuesday morning, stepping off a private jet with her new husband, Daniel Chin. At 27 years old, Lauren practically glowed with happiness. Her hand was intertwined with Daniel's as if they were afraid to let go even for a second. Daniel was 30 years old, a successful software entrepreneur from San Francisco. His company had revolutionized mobile security, and his success came from understanding people, reading their needs, and creating solutions that improved lives. When he looked at Lauren, his eyes held a reverence that Becca hadn't seen directed at her in years. The reunion in the marble foyer of the penthouse was filled with squeals of excitement and warm embraces. But something happened in those first moments that would change everything. When Daniel shook Becca's hand and asked about the artwork adorning the walls, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Someone was treating her like a person, not an accessory. Daniel listened, genuinely listened, as Becca explained the difference between the authentic Monet and the expensive reproduction. Her abandoned dreams of curating art exhibitions tumbled out like water through a broken dam. For 15 minutes, while Farhan barked orders at his staff and Lauren explored the penthouse, Becca talked about art history with someone who cared about her thoughts. This moment illustrates a critical psychological principle. Emotional neglect in a primary relationship creates vulnerability to outside connection. When our fundamental needs for recognition and respect aren't met at home, we become susceptible to anyone who offers genuine attention. This doesn't excuse what happened next, but it helps us understand how ordinary people can make devastating choices. The first text message arrived at 2:47 in the morning, 3 days into Lauren and Daniel's honeymoon stay. Becca stared at her phone in the darkness of the master bedroom as Farhan snored beside her, creating a soundtrack of indifference. The message read simply, "Can't sleep. Jet lag is brutal. Hope I didn't bore you earlier talking about galleries." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Not at all. I haven't talked about art in years." It felt nice. What followed was a textbook case of emotional infidelity escalating into physical betrayal. Night after night, while Lauren slept off days of shopping and spa treatments, Daniel and Becca connected across the digital divide. He shared the pressure of success, the loneliness that came with always performing happiness. She shared her suffocation, her dreams of independence, the way Mumbai's golden towers sometimes felt like beautiful prison bars. The progression was inevitable and, according to relationship experts, entirely predictable. Digital conversations led to accidental encounters in hotel lobbies. Coincidental coffee meetings while Lauren underwent beauty treatments. Long drives along Mumbai's coastal highways where the vast ocean somehow made room for the enormous emotions growing between them. Daniel proved to be everything Becca had been starved of. Present, interested, emotionally available. He remembered that she preferred oat milk lattes, asked follow-up questions about things she'd mentioned days earlier, treated her opinions like they mattered. When he looked at her, she didn't see calculation. She saw recognition. Their first physical encounter happened in a suite at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. Both knew it was wrong. Both tried to resist. But the combination of emotional connection and physical attraction proved too powerful. Their affair bloomed in Mumbai's shadows, a city where money could buy silence and discretion. Anonymous hotels, private beach cabanas, encounters that left them both feeling alive and guilty in equal measure. In Daniel's arms, Becca transformed from a depressed trophy wife into a woman who remembered what it felt like to be desired for her mind, her passion, her essence rather than just her appearance. But affairs rarely remain secret forever. And the person who discovered this one would prove far more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. Lauren Mitchell had always been perceptive. Years of subtle competition with her cousin had sharpened her instincts to a razor's edge. She began noticing small inconsistencies. A phone that buzzed at odd hours. A husband who seemed distracted during romantic dinners. A glow in Becca's eyes that hadn't been there since her wedding day. The tracking began subtly. A shared location app installed for safety. Casual questions about Daniel's business meetings. Following him to surprise him with lunch, only to find him absent from where he'd claimed to be. The night Lauren found definitive proof changed everything. Using a tracking app, she followed Daniel to a penthouse suite at the Atlantis. Through careful positioning, she captured photographs of Daniel and Becca kissing in the shadows of the hotel's fountain area. As she stared at those images, her hand unconsciously moved to her abdomen. Lauren was carrying a secret far more deadly than their affair. 6 months earlier, she had received a diagnosis that had shattered her world. HIV positive. The result of a brief relationship before meeting Daniel, a relationship she had hidden out of shame and fear. She had planned to tell Daniel after the honeymoon. But fear had kept her silent, and now, watching her husband betray her with her own cousin, that fear transformed into something far darker. This is where our story takes a turn that challenges our understanding of justice and revenge. What Lauren did next wasn't a crime of passion. It was calculated, methodical, and would ultimately claim multiple lives. If Becca wanted to destroy her marriage, Lauren decided she would destroy them both. Before we continue, I want to remind you that Crime Canvas brings you these complex stories to understand human nature, not to glorify violence. Please subscribe to our channel to support thoughtful true crime content that treats victims with respect and explores the psychology behind devastating choices. Lauren's plan relied on a weapon that left no fingerprints, required no special skills, and could be deployed through the most intimate act between human beings. She would use her own blood as a tool of revenge. The sleeping pills dissolved on her tongue like communion wafers as she perfected the performance. The drowsy yawn. The exhausted collapse into bed. The steady breathing that convinced Daniel she was lost in pharmaceutical dreams. But her mind was calculating, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to execute her revenge. What followed was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Lauren confronted them during one of their encounters, revealing her HIV status with theatrical precision. She watched their faces transform from defiance to horror as the implications sank in. But she didn't stop there. Lauren played the dying woman seeking forgiveness, the wife willing to work through betrayal for the sake of love. She used Daniel's natural empathy, the very quality that made him attractive, as his fatal flaw. His guilt over the affair transformed into guilt over potentially abandoning a dying woman. Couples therapy sessions where Lauren performed vulnerability. Romantic dinners where she watched Daniel struggle with his conscience. And intimate moments where she deliberately, methodically infected the man who had betrayed her. Medical experts explain that HIV transmission doesn't happen with every exposure, but certain factors increase the risk significantly. Lauren researched viral loads, transmission rates, optimal conditions. Each encounter during their reconciliation was calculated with scientific precision. Daniel thought he was healing their marriage. Lauren knew she was destroying his life. The medical community has documented cases of intentional HIV transmission, though they remain relatively rare. In most jurisdictions, knowingly exposing someone to HIV without disclosure is a criminal offense, sometimes classified as assault or attempted murder. But proving intent can be extraordinarily difficult, especially in intimate relationships where trust is assumed. Lauren had studied these cases. She knew exactly how to leave no evidence of her true intentions. Daniel needed closure. Guilt-ridden and desperate to end things properly with Becca, he met her one final time at their desert sanctuary outside the city. What neither of them knew was that Daniel was now carrying more than guilt in his bloodstream. The passion that erupted between them was fueled by desperation. This was their last chance to feel the connection that had changed both their lives. As they made love with the desperation of a final goodbye, Daniel unknowingly passed along Lauren's gift. The virus found a new host in the woman he loved but could never have. 3 people now carried the infection. Only one knew the truth. Lauren's satisfaction was almost visceral as she watched the mysterious symptoms begin. Daniel's fatigue, which he attributed to emotional stress. Becca's night sweats, which she blamed on Mumbai's humid climate. The swollen lymph nodes they both developed but never mentioned to each other, shame keeping them from seeking medical attention. This pattern is tragically common. Many people delay HIV testing due to stigma, fear, or simple denial. By the time symptoms become severe enough to force medical attention, the virus has often progressed significantly. Early detection and treatment can allow people with HIV to live normal lifespans, but shame and secrecy often prevent early intervention. Lauren created encrypted files tracking every symptom, every progression, every step toward the slow death she had orchestrated. Her background in pre-medical studies made her the perfect observer of her own biological warfare. 3 months passed before the inevitable hospital visits began. The Breach Candy Hospital had never seen anything like it. 2 patients, connected only by circumstance, receiving identical diagnoses on the same gray Tuesday morning. Dr. Mira Kulkarni stared at the lab results with growing confusion as she prepared to deliver news that would shatter 2 lives simultaneously. HIV positive. Advanced stage. The infection appeared to have occurred approximately 4 months earlier. The medical investigation that followed was swift and thorough. Blood work timelines, viral load analysis, genetic sequencing. Modern medicine laid bare the chain of transmission with scientific precision. Daniel had infected Becca during their final encounter. But Daniel himself had been infected weeks earlier by someone who remained mysteriously absent from the hospital's investigation. The confrontation between Daniel and Becca in her hospital room was heartbreaking. 2 dying people faced each other across a gulf of guilt and accusation. Their love story transformed into a biological nightmare. The truth hit them simultaneously. Lauren's careful manipulation, her calculated reconciliation, her methodical infection of her own husband. It had all been deliberate. They weren't victims of tragic circumstance. They were casualties of biological warfare. But knowing the truth couldn't save them. The virus had progressed too far, their immune systems too compromised. Medical intervention at this stage could slow but not reverse the damage. Both Daniel and Becca would die within weeks of each other. According to medical experts, the timeline suggests both victims entered the AIDS stage before diagnosis. At this point, the immune system is severely compromised, and opportunistic infections can be fatal even with treatment. Had they been tested earlier, antiretroviral therapy could have suppressed the virus and allowed them years, even decades, of healthy life. Lauren visited both deathbeds, playing the grieving wife and devastated cousin with performances that would have earned awards. To Daniel's bedside, she brought tears and whispered apologies for not protecting him from Becca's reckless behavior. To Becca's penthouse deathbed, she delivered her confession with surgical precision. "You took my husband," Lauren said, watching her cousin's labored breathing through tubes and machines. "So I gave you both a present. The gift that keeps on giving." You might expect this story to end with Lauren's arrest and prosecution. But justice proved far more complicated than that. The legal process moved slowly. Extradition requests, international medical investigations, jurisdictional disputes. Lauren's lawyers bought her time with the same currency that ruled everything in this city. From her luxury hotel suite, Lauren watched the news coverage with satisfaction. 2 deaths ruled as complications from HIV transmission. No mention of deliberate infection. No criminal charges filed initially. She had committed what appeared to be the perfect crime, leaving only grief and medical records in her wake. But as she planned her next move, a new realization crystallized in her mind. Daniel and Becca hadn't been the true villains in this story. They were symptoms of a deeper disease. The real cancer was the system that created women like Becca, trapped in golden cages by men who treated wives like acquisitions. Farhan Desai represented everything wrong with this dynamic. 63 years old, wealthy beyond measure, collecting young women like expensive art pieces. He had created the conditions that drove Becca to seek love elsewhere. His emotional neglect and possessive control made him, in Lauren's mind, the true architect of everyone's destruction. Lauren's revenge evolved from personal vendetta to what she saw as social justice. Farhan wasn't just her next target. He was a symbol of every wealthy man who used money to purchase human beings. The seduction began at Becca's funeral. Lauren arrived draped in black designer clothing, playing the grieving cousin seeking comfort. Farhan, guilt-ridden over his wife's death and the scandal that had destroyed his reputation, found himself drawn to the young American who seemed to understand his pain. Their conversations continued beyond the funeral. Coffee meetings where Lauren played the wise confidant. Dinner invitations where she provided the emotional support Farhan had never given his wife. The pattern repeated with terrifying precision. Lauren drew Farhan into intimate encounters that would seal his fate. The biological warfare had entered its second phase. And Lauren had found what she believed was her true calling in the systematic destruction of powerful men who treated women as commodities. This transformation from victim to perpetrator to what some might call a vigilante raises profound questions about justice, trauma, and the cycle of violence. Lauren had been genuinely wronged, both by her diagnosis and by the betrayal. But her response escalated beyond personal revenge into something far more dangerous. Psychologists who study trauma and revenge describe a phenomenon where victims sometimes transform into perpetrators, using their own suffering as justification for causing harm to others. Lauren's actions represent an extreme case of this pattern, where personal pain becomes weaponized into systematic violence. Farhan Desai had survived market crashes, real estate collapses, and political upheavals that would have destroyed lesser men. But he couldn't survive Lauren Mitchell. For 3 months he attributed his declining health to stress and guilt. The weight loss, the recurring infections, the mysterious symptoms. He never suspected the truth until it was too late. The diagnosis came on a Thursday morning that would forever divide his life into before and after. HIV positive, advanced stage. The infection had occurred approximately 4 to 5 months earlier. Within hours, news leaked through Mumbai's elite social circles. Business partners who had courted his favor for decades suddenly discovered urgent reasons to dissolve their partnerships. The Desai Properties Group, which had built much of Mumbai's skyline, watched its stock price collapse as investors fled anything connected to the scandal. Mumbai's high society watched in horror as one of their titans fell victim to the same biological warfare that had claimed his wife. If Farhan Desai, careful, powerful, seemingly untouchable Farhan could be infected and destroyed, then none of them were safe. The final confrontation came on a blood moon night. Farhan, his once commanding presence reduced to a skeletal shadow, confronted Lauren in the penthouse where this nightmare began. Lauren didn't deny anything. She laid out her campaign with cold precision. The deliberate infection of Daniel, the calculated transmission to Becca, the methodical seduction and contamination of Farhan himself. She wasn't a scorned wife seeking revenge anymore. She saw herself as someone dispensing justice against systematic oppression. The ending remains deliberately ambiguous, wrapped in legal complexity and jurisdictional challenges. Some reports suggest Lauren vanished into the night, using false identities and offshore accounts to escape prosecution. Intelligence agencies whispered about similar cases emerging in other wealthy enclaves around the world. Biological warfare targeting powerful men who treated women as commodities. Other accounts state that authorities eventually apprehended her, though the legal proceedings dragged on for years. The challenge of proving intentional transmission, especially across multiple victims and international borders, made prosecution extraordinarily difficult. What remains undisputed is the message Lauren left behind. In exclusive communities worldwide, the ultra-wealthy now live with the knowledge that their money can't protect them from someone willing to use their own blood as a weapon. Every intimate encounter carries potential danger. Every relationship the possibility of biological warfare. This case raises profound questions about justice, revenge, and the cycle of violence. Lauren was genuinely wronged, both by her infection and by the betrayal. Becca was trapped in an oppressive marriage that deprived her of basic emotional needs. Daniel made a choice that betrayed his wife's trust. And Farhan created the conditions that drove his wife to seek connection elsewhere. But none of these wrongs justified Lauren's actions. Her transformation from victim to biological terrorist claimed innocent lives and spread trauma far beyond her intended targets. Medical staff, family members, communities. The ripples of her revenge touched countless lives. The medical community now uses this case in training programs about the importance of early HIV testing, disclosure requirements, and the devastating consequences of weaponizing disease. Legal experts cited in discussions about intentional transmission laws and the challenges of prosecuting biological crimes. For those of us at Crime Canvas, this story serves as a reminder that revenge, no matter how justified the initial grievance, ultimately destroys everyone it touches. The cycle of harm perpetuates itself, creating more victims, more trauma, more pain. If you're in a relationship where you feel trapped, objectified, or emotionally neglected, please seek help from counselors, support groups, or trusted friends. If you've been betrayed or are dealing with a serious diagnosis, please reach out to mental health professionals who can help you process these emotions in healthy ways. And if you found value in this exploration of a complex and tragic case, please subscribe to Crime Canvas. We bring you true crime content that respects victims, explores psychology, and helps us all understand the darkness and light within human nature. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay compassionate, and remember that every action we take sends ripples far beyond what we can see. Crime Canvas, where every story paints a picture of human nature.